Never met those miracles a reason to appeal for money or to be known. No.
Tracing the Mantles is a program whose core is to identify mantle carriers from our fathers.
That Catholic woman stood and he was sliding everywhere. He said, oh yes, now this is the black Catholic woman.
But these are not only mantles, but spiritual authorities that have paid the cost, stood the test of time.
You are given 6 hours to leave the country.
And made lots of sacrifices for the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Many of us invested in the school, college, university ministry.
But these are not only mantles, but spiritual authorities.
One of the things that bring revival in this country is the power of the Holy Spirit, the presence of the Holy Spirit.
Catch Tracing the Mantles every Sunday from 8:30, hosted by Pastor Sunda Juma, only on Elevate TV.
Merry Christmas right here at Elevate TV. My friend, this is the time of the year where we just come to remember about Emmanuel. I want to encourage you on 3 points. Number 1, take some time and rest. During this season, you need to rest, you need to renew, and you need to restitute. Number 2, under promise but over deliver. Finally, during this season, become a blessing to somebody. Practice random acts of kindness. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a prosperous, happy, blessed 2025.
Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers. This is another exciting episode of the GG Report. I'm your host, Godfrey Gichuki, and I want to welcome you to join us for this yet one more show before the close of the year. I think this is going to be our last one, and then we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back in January. But yes, thank you for tuning in. We are live on TV and on our social media platforms as usual. Elevate TV Kenya, Facebook page, YouTube channel. Karibu, join us. This is an amazing conversation today. I'm joined on the set this evening by a friend of mine, longtime friend, and an academic, a preacher, a theologian. I'll be telling you more about him, and but I will ask him to just show his face and welcome you guys to the show briefly, and then after that, I'll tell you what this conversation is about. So there you are, please, that camera. Welcome our viewers.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Proffesor Kinoti. I am thrilled to be on the show tonight, and we'll be talking about my latest book on how to work and deal with conflicts. And I'm excited to be here, Gigi. It's great to catch up after many years. We went to Moi together in the early 90s. So
wonderful,
yeah.
Wonderful. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Welcome. And please remember to share. Call your friends. Let's join in this conversation. And now to our subject. Today we're going to be talking about making peace with fire, how to transform conflict into a force for good. And this is coming off Dr. Kinoti's latest book. It's called Making Peace with Fire. It's an amazing story. We're going to be diving into that conversation. But before we get there, let's just lay the background. Now, it is evident that human conflict is synonymous with the very nature of being human. It is as old as human civilization itself. This is my own little summary. So learning how to transform conflict into a force for good is at the heart of our conversation today. Now, from the metaphor of fire to intricate lessons drawn from his African cultural heritage, Dr. Kinoti combines anthropological analysis, biblical wisdom, combined with his extensive experience as a professor of non-profit leadership and management at Regis University in Denver, Colorado, USA, to weave together a solid guide on how to transform conflict into human relationships to a force for good. In other words, dealing with human relationship is very, very complex, but my guest has done an amazing job. And as the Bible admonishes that blessed are the peacemakers, they shall be called the children of God, you really must read this book and deal with the whole issue of how to make peace with fire. In a very, very interesting way, we're going to have this conversation. So, welcome. And as always, the Gigi Report is a platform for big, bold, honest conversation on a broad range of subject matters. That is social, cultural, legal, political, philosophical, theological, and everything in between. And today we are very, very blessed. We're going to be diving into some theological issues, social, cultural issues, and the dynamics of human relationships. And I'm sure my guest is up to it. But let me just introduce him. I like doing this so that you have a perspective. I know he will talk about himself. But my guest is, like I've said, Dr. M.D. Kinoti. He's a scholar. He's an author in the field of peace and development. He holds a PhD in peace building from Fuller Theological Seminary. I hope I'm saying that Fuller very well.
Fuller, yes. No,
Fuller.
that's good.
Yeah, Dr. Kinoti has trained leaders in peace building across more than 20 countries, and he currently serves as professor of nonprofit management at Regis University in Denver, Colorado. And I'm very happy to have him here. He's my old-time friend, and I always drag my friends into this show. So welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Wonderful. I know I've given a very big introduction, but I always like asking my guests, again, to tell us about their career and how they got to where they are today.
Yes.
Try to make it brief, but yes, that's important.
Well, I was born in Meru, so that's brief enough. Went to Kanyakinde boys, to Machakos boys, and you and I met in Moi University.
Right.
I was studying sociology. You were an engineer, but in the Christian Union, that was a place where our lives intersected a little more. And actually, I think we served in the Christian Union leadership the same about a year or so.
Right.
And then after Moi, I worked for World Vision International here in Kenya. Was involved in community development. I did some work here in Nairobi, Kibera, and Dagoretti in microfinancing. And I already felt the call of God to go into mission. There's a focus, Fellowship of Christian Unions, commission conferences there's one going on at the end of this month. And my call, really felt the call in 1991. So I needed to go into ministry. And so joining World Vision was part of that call, and being involved in community development. But it stayed on, and after a few years at World Vision, we moved to the United States in 1999 to go to Fuller Theological Seminary to prepare for further ministry. I did not ever anticipate being a professor. That was the fastest thing I ever thought I would do. I thought I would go back, maybe serve in a church setting, or go work with an NGO again, because I love doing community development. But somehow the Lord directed me to go into teaching, and teaching people like myself who are working with NGOs and working in community development. So for the last 15 years, that's what I've done, and now I direct 2 programs. One is the Masters of Nonprofit Management, and the other one is the Masters of Sustainable Development Practice at Regis University. And Regis University is a Jesuit Catholic university. So I know there might be a question there, what is an evangelical Christian doing in a Catholic university? I found my people. The Jesuits are some of the best evangelists of the gospel,
Right.
especially when it comes to serving people who are in the margins. So that's a brief, run into my career.
Wonderful. Yeah, and that's a good place to start. Absolutely amazing, and I love what you do. I have read some of your work, and you're very, very passionate, and of course very scholarly. But I think, like you said, our paths crossed at Moy University,
Yes.
and we've stayed in touch, though sometimes a bit detached because of distance. And I think I lost you somewhere, and then we found each other along the way. So welcome back.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you're in Nairobi. Maybe you can tell us, are you on holiday or something?
It's partly holiday, it's partly really here working for Regis. Ekima University, Ekima College, which is here in town, is a sister school to Regis University. It's a Jesuit school. And Ekima is starting a university in the coming years, which
Right.
is going to be based in Molo.
Okay.
And so my leadership at Regis thought I should come over and try to figure out how we can partner with the sister school here.
Okay.
I am blessed to be able to travel this way, especially when the leadership thinks that it's something I can help in the East African region, so they send me over here. So I've been here, several other times in the last few years, Uganda, Rwanda, and the region.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's go into the discussion. Okay, what we have laid out to talk about, and especially this book. Let's look at the central theme of your latest book, Making Peace with Fire, Harnessing Conflict to Transform Relationships. So let me begin by asking, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, great question. What inspired me to write the book was a whole host of things. One, it's my own experience. Growing up in a rural community in Kenya, in Meru. I'm in Kenya, so I can say Meru.
Kenya, Meru.
Yeah. I'm used to doing interviews in the US, so
All right.
yeah, still
Yeah.
catching up.
Yeah.
But growing up in Meru, and if you remember the stories of the 1970s, and the experience of being a small boy who is dealing with, that was when there was the shifter movement. There were all these talks against the Merus, against the Borans or the Somalis on the other side. And so conflict was really there at that level, at the tribal level. It was also there in my family. My dad was a polygamist, so with several wives, you can imagine the chaos that comes with that.
Yes.
And then going to school, of course, boys, girls, there was conflict at every spot. And then going through high school, I went to Machakos, and so I'm seen as an outsider when I'm in Machakos because I'm from Meru. And there's always that tension of, wa Meru na Wakamba. And that kept on in almost every point in my life. We finished university in 1991, and that was the multi-party conflictual environment in the country. And so there's all this, there's no good dialogue. There's people being beaten up, similar to what has just gone on a few months ago. So conflict was in every sport of my life was part of it. When I moved to the US to go study, I wanted to study more of how the church can react to interethnic conflicts, And my thinking was, how can we do that here in Kenya? But I found communities are also just as divided in the US. The whites, the blacks, the Hispanic, the Asians are just as divided as we were here in terms of our ethnicities. And so I thought this is a real need for us as society to address. And the more I also read the Bible, I could see this theme of being peacemakers, living at peace with other people, working out your relationships with people. So it has helped me to think that way, or to bring my faith into that, into looking at why are we so much in conflict, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, I love that. Actually, clearly, I think you, as an academic, you know, I think one of the things we are blessed with, I'm saying we, maybe let me just say you, is that, you know, the whole idea of observing something and kind of seeing a pattern and then asking yourself, how does this phenomenon lay itself out? So, and you can see the minute you opened yourself to that, you could see the conflict patterns across your personal experience, across nations, tribes, and all that, and that's very, very interesting. So, let's then talk specifically. How important is peacemaking to the flourishing of human relationship, and to add on to that, and why are we so inept in peacemaking? I think that's a serious issue.
Yes. Let me back up a little to say much of my preparation really for observing society came from Moi, Moi University. Studying sociology and being trained out to think about issues at the societal level helped me to start thinking about those, just looking at those trends you're talking about. But forward, going into ministry and now starting to teach and starting to do more research, it helped me to start putting the pieces together. But the grounding of the scriptures was just what I needed to be able to say, this is what I'm observing, but there is also a part of our background as Christians that should help us in that. I think your question on why we are so inept, why we are not well equipped in terms of peace building, is because we often don't think our relationships are that important. And yet, we cannot live without relationships.
That's a very, very important point. In fact, I think I'm going to pause you there. Please don't lose the thought. Ladies and gentlemen, as you follow this conversation, we are talking about, making peace with fire, how to really harness conflict. And sometimes we all fall into some conflict in our personal relationship with our own family members, and sometimes even our spouses and communities and stuff like that. But as you're saying, Dr. Kinoti, is that sometimes we are not really committed to preserving relationship. Dive a little bit more into that.
See, the way God created us, whether you're male, female, old, young, we all need the social connection. We need relationships. In Christian terms, we call them fellowships, but really we're made to be in a relationship with other people. And conflicts are really about being in relationship with other people. The differences between us, you think in a certain way, you are brought up in a certain way, you have a different perspective of things, personality, and all those. That's where the rub comes in. That's where we tend to end up in, you see things different, I see them different, you have different interests, and that's where we end up missing each other. And often that's where the disagreements that can lead to conflicts come in. The point you raised about not taking seriously relationships is sometimes we are trained, or sometimes we've told ourselves, if I don't like the way you behave, I can just walk away.
Right.
If I don't like the church where I am at, I just go to the next church over. Instead of holding on and learning something from this experience that we are having, the differences that I'm seeing from you, the way you're thinking and the way you communicate and the way you like to do things, instead of sitting down long enough to want to learn from that, we take the easy way out. There is another side of that coin, which I think is also quite, it's a very poor training that we've given ourselves. In almost every culture, you hear the term dawa ya moto ni moto.
I was going to raise
You
that.
also you fight fire with fire.
Yes.
In the US, they say you don't come to a fight with a knife when everybody else is coming with a machine gun.
Right.
Now, what that means is we're training ourselves and we're training our society to think the only way to deal with issues between us or differences between us is you got to have to get ready for a fight.
Okay.
So my question is that really what we need? When we look at the Bible, that's not what it tells us we should do. It tells us to be peacemakers. Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God, the children of God.
Yes.
And Paul will go on to repeat that, says, as long as it depends on you, live at peace with all people. I think we have to take not just the scriptures seriously, but the fact that we are created for each other and for humanity and for relationship with each other. We have to take those seriously, and if we do, then we will not be running away from conflicts. What we will do is use those as opportunities to dig deeper, to hold on, stay a little longer until we can learn how to navigate our relationship with one another.
Wonderful, wonderful, and I love that. So yeah, so there is the kind of like what we've learned from the society, the bit of dawa ya moto ni moto.
Yes.
I mean, as I was reading through this book, to be very honest, I kind of had a moment of kind of reflection, because I remember there was a conversation I was having with someone, and then I felt I needed to raise my voice. I did. And then later on, I remember, no. Dr. Kinoti has a different perspective on that. And out of that quick reflection, I actually realized how easy it is to be reflective in a kind of a learned way, to fight, to respond, to take on something from, to take on that mode of fighting. That's very amazing. Now, I really want us to dive all the way deep into some of the things you have laid out. How did we? Okay, so we've talked about the dawa ya moto ni moto, and the fact that it's actually a fallacy, which we have all imbibed and agreed. So let's talk about the actual mechanics of dealing with conflicts, because that's the heart of your book. I know I'm actually going to do most of the listening now.
Yes.
But I want you to lay out the main picture, and then we can go to the little bits and pieces. I'm sure some of the key skill sets, and I like some of the way you've defined peace building, or peacemaking. These are skills that we must learn.
Yes.
So let's look at some of the key issues that you've laid out in this journey of building relationships.
I think I start from, in terms of laying out skills, I start from understanding oneself.
Yes.
That we have to be honest with ourselves. I need to know how, when I'm confronted with difference, when I'm confronted by somebody who has a different way of doing things, how does that make me feel? Where do I go? You said when you were in this relationship with this person, whether it was you invested in the relationship or not, something triggered, something started to work in you where you started to raise your voice. Knowing that alone is very, very important. It's a good place to begin, to say, especially if you're able to step away and say, why did I react that way? Is that how I was taught to do things? Is that how I was cultured, or if my family brought me up to do things? And what was I defending? What was so important for me to get so emotional? Now, the fact is that we are built with all these reactions and feelings and ways of doing things. We need to be emotional. There's no question about that.
Right.
But those emotions are also under our control. There's nothing that God has given us in terms of our emotions that completely takes us over. That's another part of that fallacy. When some people say when they get angry, I couldn't think.
Yeah.
I ended up attacking. So that's a beginning. It's really understand who I am and try and figure out, and that takes time. That takes a little more depth and honesty. It might also take asking people who are close to you to tell you what they see and how they perceive you, how they experience you. And if you're really truly interested in learning, that's the beginning.
Right.
But the other skills that we can develop is listening. When I'm listening, when we're in, especially when there's a conflict and the emotions are starting to rise, how do I listen? What am I looking to do with my, how I'm going to react to you? Am I trying to outshine you or walk through whatever we're walking through to shout or yell the loudest? And that's how I'm trying to, go through this. So that's another skill is I need to listen to hear, not just to hear what you're saying, but to hear what is behind what you're saying. What are you really interested in? We can go to other skills like forgiveness. And I know forgiveness gets a bad rap in our Christian communities because, hey, just forgive and move on.
Yes.
That's not what Jesus is really talking about. He's talking about confronting. When he says turn the other cheek, he's really talking about confront the person, make them see their mistakes or what they're doing. But I have to forgive. I have to be willing to get to the next step where I'm ready to forgive because I've also been forgiven.
Right.
See, that goes back to recognizing who I am. It goes back to recognizing I'm a sinner. I am also broken. Knowing how I react to things, how I can do the listening, how I need to be forgiving. But we can't forget that in some cases there is abuse.
Yes.
And there's a chapter that we deal with abuse in the book where we say we are not casting a blanket offer for forgiveness. We're saying if there is a point at which you need to separate yourself, move away from being in that abusive situation, you need to do it.
All right.
And then there are some other skills that we have outlined here, like at what point do you say, this relationship was great, but I need to move on? And how do you move on? Or this relationship, we've been able to patch it up well enough. How do we celebrate?
Oh, yeah. I noticed that. I noticed that I was reading through your book. Actually, you proposes, a very unique thing. I think we kind of completely pass it in the Bible that, and we'll be coming back to this, the fact that, if a relationship is going well, or if there has been a moment of kind of like makeup and reconciliation, I think one of the ways to solidify that is to have some kind of celebration.
Yes, there's something that celebration does to us as human beings, and I'm not a psychologist at all, but I know when we have some moments of joy, some moments of celebrating something we have achieved, it kind of internalizes to us that that's a good thing, that's something we should go for. And when you talk to the psychologists, maybe you can ask them, what is that about?
Yes.
But to me, especially when I have been able to overcome an obstacle, especially when I've been able to overcome a broken relationship, there's a weight that is taken away from me. And what I'm suggesting in the book is memorialize that.
Okay.
Celebrate that. Don't rush too quickly out of it. Look at how this relationship was restored. And in terms of, because that's what we want to develop anyways. We know the things that we memorialize, we celebrate, we put a stone somewhere to say God brought us through this. That kind of clues our minds to want to do more of that.
Yes.
And therefore, that's why I'm suggesting when we've been able to work through a conflict, let's not rush away from it so quickly. Let's find a way where we can say, yeah, and that was a great thing for us. But it doesn't always happen, obviously. I mean, there are certain situations where all we needed is to get this done, sometimes agree to disagree, and continue.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. That's true. Absolutely amazing. In fact, I'm thinking while you talk about memorializing, I'm actually thinking about even when, say, countries have been at war with each other and they've come to a place where the various parties have, decided, look, let's come to the table, let's talk this out. And often you have, say, like countries, when they come out of a conflict, they will probably put like a memory, a celebration. It is maybe I just thought we can throw that the American Thanksgiving. Is that what it is about?
The American Thanksgiving is a tricky one,
Oh,
but I would say that if you think of some countries that have gone through that experience of going all the way through conflict, and they have signed a peace deal.
Yes.
That signing of a peace deal and shaking hands.
Yes.
And there are many examples around the world.
Okay.
That signing and shaking hands, sometimes even putting a monument.
Yes.
Is really that idea of saying, look, we were able to overcome a difficulty. So what I'm suggesting with the book, because this is an interpersonal relations book, what I'm suggesting is at the personal level, at the human personal level, you and I, let's find some creative ways of doing that, of celebrating. It might just be going out for a cup of tea.
Right. Wonderful.
It might just be having a good laugh, if we can.
Okay.
But it might just be, okay, Bwana, we got through that, and thank you for being honest with me, or thank you for hanging out with me for us to talk about this.
Wonderful. I'm going to cut you short because we want to go for a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you are enjoying this conversation. As you can tell, I'm hardly pausing, and we want to take a short break. When we come back, we'll return to that conversation. We'll look at some of the other dynamics and how you can actually make your important relationship work, and if you're going through a tough, broken relationship, how you can recover. And my guest here will be telling us more. So don't go away, take a short break. We're coming back here shortly.
Looking for a school that provides a solid foundation for your little one? Lozi Christian School is now admitting children from 2 to 6 years old from January 2025. At Lozi Christian School, we understand that every child is unique. Our qualified and experienced teachers ensure that each child gets the personalized attention they need. Our beautiful classrooms are designed to stimulate learning and spark curiosity, offering a rich environment that caters to every child's developmental stage. And we provide balanced meals, snacks, and lunch to keep your little one healthy and energized throughout the day. With a Christian approach, we focus on the holistic growth of every child. Give your child the start of a strong start in life with a school that truly cares. Enroll today. Don't miss this opportunity to give your child the best start. Visit us off Kasarani Mweki Road or call us now at +254 758 396 110. Lozi Christian School, a foundation for the future.
This is the Gigi Report. We are talking about making peace with fire, and this is a very interesting conversation, how to actually leverage, or let me just say, how to transform conflict into a force for good. I mean, I don't want to mix that up. As you know very well, conflicts are part of living. Anyone in a relationship will always encounter differences, whether it's even a marriage relationship, whether it's a workplace relationship, whether it's ministry, and particularly in ministry. You know, people fall out in ministry big time and fight and all that. But all relationships, while they are subjects sometimes because of differences, they can fall into conflict. There is a way actually to leverage knowledge of peacemaking. And my guest here, Dr. Kinoti, he's really shared with us very, very good insights. Some of the things he said before we went to the break was knowing yourself, recognizing who you are, and then learning to listen, and then the place of forgiveness. And then, of course, there are also other challenges that do come, like abuse. There is a risk for a relationship to become abusive. And in that case, you might have to walk away. But there is always need to work through that. And then, of course, something else that Dr. Kinoti brings into this conversation, the whole idea of celebration, celebrating, memorizing, and especially when you are able to achieve a resolution to a conflict. And Dr. Kinoti, I think that's a very, very profound insight, because I think we are all very, very poor at, like you started at the beginning, taking relationship seriously.
Intentionality.
Yes. And commitment.
Yes. If we know, if we think, and we appreciate the fact that God created us to be in community. I mean, at the beginning of all this, God says when he creates Adam, everything else he looks at, he says, it's perfect, it's good.
Yes.
But once he looks at Adam, he says, not good. It's not good for a man to be alone.
Yes.
So he creates for him a partner. And that's where we come from. That's where relationships come from. We come from God himself putting us into community, into families first of all, and then in community. So if we believe what God is trying to do is actually to build families, to build our friendships and our communities, our social networks, then we ought to take some of these quite seriously and intentionally look at ways of building them and not destroying them.
Right. Yes. And we all run the risk of actually, in our not paying attention, actually then allowing conflicts to break a very, very important relationship. But before I ask you to dive into the other matters, I just want to read some of the comments. Thank you very much, those of you that are following this conversation. Karen Mwehaki is saying it's not good to see you. It's good to see you back on the Gigi Report. Oh, Karen is actually celebrating the fact that I'm back on the set. I was away. Victor Kipkorid is tuned in. And then, of course, Karen Kibuchi, that's mine truly. This is a healthy discussion. That's what she's saying. And she's watching and listening. Keep watching, my dear Karen over there. Esther Kebaya tuned in. Wonderful. Karibu sana, Esther. I know you are in some you are part of the family. Wonderful. And then Fred Muli, dawa ya moto ni moto, si moto. Dawa ya moto ni moto is a fallacy. Yeah, that's very good, Bwana Muli, that you have just picked that up. Understand who you are and know how to handle or control your emotions. Very, very important. And then Karen also adds, always question your actions and emotions. Absolutely amazing. So, Dr. Kinoti, actually, because I know we really need to dive into all the different issues. Let me ask a very interesting question, because we talk about, we said that sometimes even ineptitude, I mean, the fact that people don't take relationships seriously, sometimes they don't actually realize there's a way you can solve, you can be prepared sufficiently to handle conflicts in relationships. Let's talk about culture.
Yes.
What's the role of culture? And are there some cultures that are better prepared to resolve conflicts than others, given the whether we're talking about personal, family, and all that? Yeah.
Culture is a big part of who we are because it's that creative force that really makes life doable between ourselves. It's the things we've created between ourselves as a family, as communities, and that's how it's really the software that helps us to relate with one another. It helps us to know when to say yes, when to say no, how to relate with whoever is around us. And then we have put laws around it. We've put, you don't do these kind of things. So culture is very important. Now, looking at some of our cultures here in Kenya, for sure, I would say we actually have a very good history of how to deal with things. We're losing some of it because we are running to embrace the West, whereas we, because of our very strong interest in our families, in our communities, we found a way to handle the issues around us. If you growing up in Meru, if there was an issue in the village, even if it was a husband and wife, there was always someone else, a neighbor or an elder,
a
family member
leader
who will come and help folks talk about their issues. And I know that is breaking down because now people rush into courts and they don't talk to each other. But I think I would say the African cultures were actually some of the best suited. The traditional way of doing things was the best suited to handle conflict. There was respect for the other person. There was respect also for the elders and all that that helped us to establish ways of dealing with issues. If we strip all that away and then get our courts all so overwhelmed, we don't have a real mechanism for handling issues. Plus, we can't be running to court every time we have a disagreement, you and I. We must find some other ways of doing this. Now, the church could be the place where that probably is adjudicated. But even that, I think most times churches are not well equipped to do that. Most times we'll probably pray for you and hope you figure out how to do things, which is not a bad thing.
Yes.
But I think there needs to be a lot more we need to talk about on this topic. Is there a culture that is, I would say the African cultures to me are the best suited in handling issues. I live in the United States now, and I know our culture on that side, I wouldn't even touch it because we are very, very adversarial.
Okay, yeah. And I think that needs to be said because sometimes actually people don't quite realize how far people can slip away from things that were very valuable. Things that really made communities actually function.
Yes.
They were part of the cultural norm. They were not exactly written laws, but you come from Meru.
Yes.
There is the famous Gichuki.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that was a community of elders.
Yes.
Chosen by the community to adjudicate on the bigger matters. So if there was land disputes that could not be settled at the village level or at the divisional level, they came now to the Gichuki, which was the supreme court of the Merus.
Yes.
And there are others in other communities. We must think, especially as you just said, there are certain things that worked for us. We must think of how to bring them to the 21st century. I'm not saying we recast the Gichuki into today because the issues have changed.
Yeah.
But are there some things we can reclaim? And I'm glad to say, I think there is a lot that is still happening, especially in the rural communities where disputes are still handled very much in the villages. Not everybody goes to court. We think in the city is a different story.
Yeah, here in the city. If you cross my path, I might sue you.
I might sue you.
I guess we learned that bad behavior from our Western. Of course, you know very well that our education has exposed Kenyans. We are very much we really like catching up with the West. We become very Westernized in the way, actually, and then we miss actually that particular because we're not observing. You wanted to say something?
No, the legal process here in Kenya is recognizing that actually the courts cannot handle all the issues around us.
The ADR,
and so they have started to introduce mediation, alternative dispute resolution. It's the same concept introduced in Matthew 5 and Matthew 18. You know, if you're in conflict with someone, seek someone else, let them come with you to talk with them first of all if you can. If they don't listen, go seek someone else, on and on. That process and the fact that we are borrowing from our African roots to say, yeah, let's use that, let's modernize it, let's borrow some from the West as well. I think it's a phenomenal way to go forward as a culture without throwing everything and assuming that we can go to court and get our resolutions, especially when it comes to land issues. My goodness, if you touch that in this country, is there a family that doesn't have a conflict around land? Mine is in court. Which is sad to say because I'm sitting here talking about we shouldn't talk.
Yeah.
But if the other side doesn't want to talk, then what do you do?
Yeah.
But I think what you're pointing out is the ADL mediation and such other processes, they tie very closely to our African roots and to African cultures, which I would celebrate any day instead of going to court.
Wonderful. Very well said. Very well said, Dr. Kinoti. I really love the fact that you paid so much attention, you know, in addressing this matter. And in any case, your speciality is peace building. That's what you did your PhD in.
Yes.
And God knows what else you did and all the amazing things. Do you actually, let's touch a little bit of the academic, the academy. Do you teach? You said I think you're heading to a particular directorate.
Yes.
Talk about a little bit about that, because there are people watching that perhaps would like to pursue postgraduate in you know, these areas.
Yes.
Maybe you can just touch a little bit and say there are opportunities for people to really explore those areas and become very, very good at it.
There are great opportunities, not just where I teach, but even here in Kenya. Ekima College has a master's in peace building.
Okay.
Right here in the city. So and there are several other universities here in the country who are doing peace studies and peace and development as well. So there's no shortness of what you can, if you want to train yourself in these areas. You might get more theory that way, and it does help as well. But the programs that I run, or I'm tasked to run for Regis, the Masters of Nonprofit Management, US calls them nonprofits, we call them NGOs here. The Master of NGO Management, that is all online. So if somebody wanted to do that, regis.edu, that's where they will find that. We actually have students here in Kenya who are taking our sustainable development practice, the masters, and those students are in this region because we have a process of bringing them online and being part of the program as well.
Wonderful.
But to gain skills for peace building and developing peace, peace building in general, there is a huge amount of places where people can go and find skills that will be useful.
And this is the place where they should go.
and this would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
When I was developing this book, I was trying to make sure that this is not an academic book.
Okay.
It was trying to distill what I had learned over the years in academia, trying to look at the theory, and then to look at the scriptures, the Bible, and to look at my own upbringing, including my African way of thinking, and to bring a book that anybody can pick up and read. With basic education, you should be able to get some skills here. But also it does help to get, I mean, you've read it, so you know, it has some bits and pieces in there of theory that even for someone like yourself will find it useful as well. So I would say it's a good beginning for anybody who is interested in figuring out how do I make my relationships better through the conflicts that I'll definitely face. Whether you do this or not, you're going to face conflicts. So how do I make sure I'm approaching them from a place of being learned, or at least I have some skills to fall back on?
Okay, wonderful. Now, let me ask, I'm sure you've had your own personal experience, and I don't know how much you'd like to delve in. Maybe tell us about some of the most difficult, kind of peace relationship. Some of the ones, I know you could talk about many, but maybe a practical thing that you've dealt with, and the nitty-gritties of how you got about resolving that relationship and restoring it.
I'll give you two. I'll start with a personal one,
Yeah.
which we got into. When I finished my PhD, a friend invited me to join in writing a proposal
Right.
to a government that I will not name.
The government remains unnamed.
Yeah, unnamed.
Yeah.
And I was the expert in the matters that we were trying, because I came from community development.
Yeah.
So for my consultancy, I was supposed to be paid a certain amount of money. But he was the lead. This gentleman was the lead in that project. So once we wrote the project, and I submitted my resume or my CV, and I was part of the deal. Once it was funded, he cut me off.
Oh, okay.
So it's a typical business deal where somebody becomes scrupulous and just takes off with your money.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an option. I want to go to court? In most cases, and I'm not saying people shouldn't go to court. Mm-hmm. Don't misunderstand me. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't actually have gone to court in this case, and it would have been such an embarrassment for him. Mm-hmm. But as I thought about this and trying to talk to him, he wasn't receptive. He completely cut me off, blocked my number. I realized I was dealing with somebody who was at that level. If you're going to do that kind of work and you want to lie this much, I'll just leave it alone.
Right.
And forgive
Mm-hmm.
and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I forgive and moved on was because the benefits to the community we were writing this grant for
Mm-hmm.
was tremendous.
All right.
And if I raised the voice to say this guy is taking away this responsibility that I have, that project will collapse, and the benefits to the community were going to be lost.
Okay. Okay.
So that's one. So I chose to walk away on that one. At an office. So the second example is at an office. I worked in senior leadership at an NGO mm-hmm. in the United States. And the executive director had a certain way of managing things that were, let's say, they were not the best way. Mm-hmm. And it impeded the way I did my job.
All right.
So I had to find a way of sitting down with him and said, do you realize when you do this, when you give instructions to my reports, to the people I supervise, what you're doing is you're undermining my leadership, mm-hmm. and you're undermining the way I do things. Mm-hmm. Now, he wasn't doing that maliciously, mm-hmm. but it was the way he had grown up doing things.
Right.
And didn't realize that he was undermining me. Mm-hmm. And until I sat with him, until we sat at the table and said, hey, I want you to know that this is impacting the way I do things and the way we fulfill our duties. And we were able to resolve that and come to an agreement. So on one hand, one that I had to forgive and move on. On the other side, one that I had to sit down and have a conversation and a dialogue. Mm-hmm. And we now hand a process forward. So if you have to give instructions to someone who is working under me, let's talk about it before you do that.
Yeah.
So that I know that at least you're going to be giving them that assignment.
All right. Mm-hmm. That's brilliant. That's a very, very good example. I mean, the two examples are brilliant. And I think it's to just underscore that, the practical ways of resolving conflict. As a matter of fact, actually, what that second example illustrates, so is that you're not saying that they are mortal, see mortal, mm-hmm. And then leave it there. You're saying actually that you can go beyond that naive reaction and actually take on the actual real issue, like the way you had to have a meeting. Yeah. I'm sure you had to pull yourself together.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Well, anything could have gone wrong. But thankfully, the gentleman on the other side was gracious to listen, and you boldly, brought the matter to the table, and then it was resolved. Brilliant. So I think these are very, very good lessons, ladies and gentlemen. As you follow this conversation, we are talking about how to turn conflict into a force for good. Don't shy away from conflict. If you're going through a relationship that is troubled, see that as an opportunity. Teach yourself, reflect, think, before you actually, fire that yourself or raise a storm, go to court. There is always a way you can resolve conflict, and this book is very, very good, well-written text that it's actually an easy read. This is not necessarily a textbook, but it can teach you how to harness conflicts and transform. I like the idea of transformation. And like you said, I mean, you've used the metaphor of fire, where you say, we all know that fire, it's destructive.
Yes.
But fire actually is also a force for good. Maybe you could mention that before we come to the other final things, maybe the overall lesson that we can actually take away from all this, and maybe also share some biblical word or two as we wrap this. But let's talk about fire.
Yes.
And the fact that most people fear fire, but you can turn it to a force for good.
And making peace with fire is a play on words.
Yes.
We're taking that idea of, fight fire with fire and saying, no, change that around. Because if in any environment, if you put fire out there and you don't contain it, you don't manage it, it's going to burn down a building or burn down any number of things. So it's destructive. It can be destructive. But almost every home has a fire.
Yes.
It's contained.
Yes.
It's managed. So whether it's a gas stove or a charcoal stove, whatever it is you're using to cook with, it's fire. But it's contained in an environment that now can boil something, it can cook something, and then you can use it. So I was going for a metaphor that will raise an awareness, an interest to say, fire is always around us. Don't mess with it because it will burn you up. And it will burn quite a number of things up. But use it wisely. It will help you cook. It will help you do a huge amount of things that are helpful for us. And then it's the same with conflict. Conflict is there with us, whether we like it or not. We can't run away from it. We will disagree with others. We will have differences with them. And for us to find a way of containing it so that it doesn't become explosive, destructive is what we are talking about.
Wonderful, wonderful, and I love that metaphor of making peace with fire. So relationships can be like fire. They have to be harnessed. They have to be taken care of. If you want to make the best out of relationship, even the ones that you feel are going very wrong, and you feel very angry, you feel like giving up on a relationship. You still need the fire to cook your food. So if there is something hot, please think about how you can harness that. And absolutely, Dr. Kinoti, you've shared with us a lot of wisdom. Maybe before we end, perhaps you can say some of the biblical insights that have also built around this whole issue. Maybe just touch one or two things so before we wrap this up.
The Bible is a book of peace and peace building. It starts all the way from the beginning when we sin against God, that's the biggest conflict of all. To break relationship with God, our Creator. There's no other bigger conflict than that. But then God initiates the process of healing, and so He doesn't run away. He comes to us through Jesus Christ. We're just about to celebrate Christmas. That child is called a Prince of Peace. He's coming to bring back peace, to bring that relationship back to God and to us, between us and God. But then look at Jesus and His teachings. Jesus teaches a whole lot about peace. I mean, not only the verse that I mentioned, blessed are the peacemakers.
Yeah, in Matthew chapter 5.
But He talks about love God and also love one another.
Love your neighbors.
Yeah, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
You can't quite love your neighbor as yourself without creating a peaceful process. So, and we see that even in the beginning of the church, the apostles are working diligently to bring about peaceful relationships. They are facing persecution, but they still love and care. So we as a church, we as Christians are really about that, and that's our core. We're children of God because we seek peace.
Yes, yeah,
that in itself, yeah.
That's brilliant, and maybe there is that bait, because there's some people who actually can be a little bit skeptical about Christian faith. What is the role of Christian faith, your Christian faith and background and faith in Christ, in terms of setting you up as a peacemaker?
I think it's significant for me that I have that, what I just outlined, the fact that I'm a sinner, God is reaching out to heal me and creating that peaceful relationship between me and God. But he is also calling me to be a peacemaker between myself and other people, anybody that is around me. That to me is the full core of who I am. It's not just to go to heaven, which I'm happy to, but it's also to live at peace with other people here. And there's numerous number of scriptures that we have explored here. But I need to say this as well, that yes, Christianity, biblical Christianity has been significant for me in helping me develop my perspectives about peace building. But it is also, I would like to read a book like this written by Muslims from their perspective on how to live at peace with other people. I'd like to read a book like this written by Buddhists and non-faith people on how to live at peace. We need more of this material in our communities because honestly, we're not doing too well.
Absolutely, that's the real fact of the matter.
Yeah.
We're not doing too well, as you know very well. In this country, we've had rounds of conflict. We are right now in the middle of this ideological political conflict, which is very, very difficult to resolve. Words flying around, and I think maybe the question is, do you have a special message for Kenyans? Because I think we're desperate for a peacemaker.
Yes, Kenya prides itself to be a Christian nation, quote unquote, whatever you make of that. Or at least we pride ourselves to be religious in some sense, including the folks who followed other different religions. I would say most of our religious traditions teach us how to live with other people peacefully. Christianity being what I know the most and what I subscribe to. So is it possible that if we went back to our Christian background, our Muslim backgrounds, or those other backgrounds, is it possible that would teach us something different on how to live with other people? But I would also push back into where we started, our cultures as well. Our cultures are such peaceful cultures. I mean, that's not to say that we did not have conflicts between us and other ethnic groups. But in most cultures, you'll find some threads, some ways of resolving issues so that they do not escalate, so that they don't destroy us, which to me says maybe we should rediscover some of these. We should rediscover our Christian beliefs, our other beliefs, but also go back to our cultures. Kenya has been known to be an island of peace in this region. We do not want to lose that. And I think part of it has been our heritage, our Christian and our African heritage, that we've leaned on so strongly. Let's rediscover that.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Let's rediscover actually is very much pro-peace. And even when we think about ourselves as tribes, each of those tribes have very, very rich way of resolving conflicts. And thank God that we are able to live together in peace in this part of the world. Thank you so very much. Is there anything else that you think we need to add to this conversation before we wrap up?
Well, I don't know whether you're going to mention that the book is currently available for purchase at the Ufungamano bookstore for $1,500, and it should be available in many other bookstores.
$15.
1,500 shillings.
Kenyan shillings. Oh my God, $1,500 is too much. Yeah. I know. My brother is thinking in US dollars terms. So it's $15 or maybe about 2,000 shillings, right?
Yes.
1,800 or maybe something.
I think
like
it's 1,500 shillings.
Okay, 1,500 shillings.
Yes.
So this book is available. That is Making Peace with Fire. Is written by my friend here, Proffesor MD Kinoti. He's a fine man. He's a very good man. He's a Kenyan indeed, although with an American, extraction now. It's reversed the other way, and he's a blessed man, and he's very, very passionate about teaching and getting to pass this wonderful idea. So please find your way to some of the bookshops here. You said
Ufungamano for sure.
Ufungamano House.
Yes.
And here at Elevate TV, at Elevate and Life Church International, we have a bookshop. It's called Elevation Bookshop. I'm going to ask him to leave behind some few copies here. You can come and purchase. at our Elevation Bookshop. And of course, where else books are sold, Amazon,
Yes,
Barnes
Amazon,
and
yes.
Nobles, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, this is available. So please get yourself a copy of this very wonderful book and learn. Don't let that relationship die. There is always some solution, and my guest has done an amazing job in really just laying out wonderful, wonderful thoughts and insights that can help you redeem that valuable relationship. Thank you so much, my brother. It's been a pleasure. Look at that camera and just give 30 seconds parting shots, and we go.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it, and it's great to be on the GG Report. Stay tuned. I think he has some other wonderful guests lined up in the new year. Merry Christmas, everyone, and happy 2025.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. That's all we had for you today, and we bring this show to a close. Have a great, wonderful, and very merry-making Christmas. I wish you best. I wish you blessing. I wish you grace and prosperity. And the new year 2025 is coming. And keep it elevate. God bless you. It's been such a pleasure to have you listening to us. God bless you. Bye for now. We'll see you next year.